You do not exist. Only the source exists, and his imagination. Your whole life of who you believe you are has been a complete story, a figment of imagination, truly non-existent, or should I say only existent in thought and belief. Who you take yourself to be is nothing but a concept, an idea. You are not a human. You are an idea. I'm speaking to you who thinks he is a person. You're only an idea. Well, I know you will say to me, well, look, I have arms, I have legs, I have a body, I'm tall, I'm short, I'm black, I'm white, I'm Asian, I'm European, I'm African, I'm a male, I'm a female. And to this I say, yeah, that's the idea. That's the concept. That's the story. You are not actually that. You are the idea you are that. And that idea is only imagination. Your whole life, you have lived in imagination, in thought, in a concept of who you believe you are. But it presents itself as truth, so you never question it. I'm Marcus, I'm John, I'm Jane, I'm Mary, I'm Susan. I work here, I live here. I have kids, I have a spouse. This is who you believe you are. But this is nothing but a figment of imagination. And since we think we are this imagined character in this story we call life, we think we are the doer of the actions of this character. And we think we are the thinker of the thoughts of the character. And what happens is we create a story for this character and we bind it with a thread of iron. And we live in it. And this character often has thoughts that are continuously judging and blaming and regretting the past and having anxiety and expectations about the future. And at times, feeling ashamed. And at times, we feel prideful. And this story or idea of who we are is an internal narrative, internal story of the past, the present, and the future. And this past, present, and future happenings are attached to this one concept of a me, or an idea of who I am. Now your whole life is based on thoughts or memories of who you believe you are, who you have been told you are, what you perceive you are, which are nothing but thoughts. To think I am the body is to think a thought. To think I am Marcus is to think a thought. To think I work at General Motors is to think a thought. So everything that you think you are is nothing but thought. But are you thought? I want you to examine your inner life right now. We're going to examine thoughts. Take a thought, any thought right now at this moment. Any thought, the first thought that appears to you, hold that. Do you notice how it just appeared to you? You didn't choose this thought. There is no individual agent in the system choosing the thought. Thoughts appear. There is no you or me choosing the thought. Let's examine again. Take another thought. Any thought. Notice Notice your thoughts when you're going through this. Notice how it just appears. There's no one in the system digging through a treasure chest of thoughts and choosing one out of them. Thoughts appear. These are a universal movement. There is no personal chooser of any thoughts. But when we make this story of the character of me, we think we are choosing. But this is not your experience. This is a figment of imagination. You identify with these thoughts that appear, and you create a story of a character around these thoughts, actions, and feelings, and perceptions of life. And again, you tie them with an iron thread to where you create a story of a character of a me that is truly non-existent. Let's examine thoughts one more time before we move on. I want you to, because you might not believe me when I say your thoughts just appear, I want you to take two thoughts now. Take the number 1 and the number 2. And I want you to choose between which number you want, 1 or 2. And notice when that is chosen, when that choice is made, that 1 just bubbles up and you accept that one. Even the thought might arise, which is another arising thought, that I chose it. This happens after the fact. Or you can even say, let me think, I'm going to choose 1. But this is nothing but another thought that is expressed through speech that says, I have chosen, when this I can never be found in the system. All that is found is thoughts arising and thoughts subsiding. 2 thoughts might arise. One is chosen, but there is no chooser. So when I say chosen, I mean 1 and 2. Which do you choose? The thought arises 2. No one chose it. The thought arises, and then another thought arises and says, well, I choose 2. But there is no I choosing any of it. Let me give you an analogy. There is something present witnessing all these happenings. Right? Just as the blue sky is ever present when all the happenings of the clouds go by it. Just imagine your house, the sky right above your house, the blue sky. Right? When we're talking about that you do not exist, I'm speaking of the character, the story that you have made up about yourself does not exist. And this character is embodied only in thoughts, only in ideas, only in concepts, imagination. It's as if the blue sky, when a cloud appears under it, the blue sky would say to itself, I am this cloud. This is how men say, I am the thought. I chose the thought. The cloud just appears under the blue sky and then it disappears. Yet the blue sky is ever present in that happening. Yet it doesn't leave, a piece of the sky doesn't leave with the cloud. Just as when the thought, any thought that you chose appears to you, you were prior to it appearing. And you are present when it leaves. That thought does not take a piece with you when it leaves. So it could not be you, essentially. What you are in essence. What you are is ever present, prior to thoughts, prior to feelings, prior to sights, sounds, feelings, smells, and tastes. What is that ever present, that is present before the thought, that identifies with the thought, and then the thought leaves? Just as the cloud appears before the sky and disappears, the sky is not the cloud. These clouds represent the thoughts of who you think you are, which you are not. The sky, which you are, is confusing itself with the thoughts, which the clouds represent. You are something that is ever present, so you cannot be a thought. You cannot be a concept. From where do thoughts arise? Do you know? To where do thoughts go? Can you know that? Where do they come from and reside back into? When we speak, as I gave the analogy of the sky is ever present, yet the clouds move in it. The birds move through it. Yet none of this ever affects the sky, the blue sky. And similarly, as the sky is ever present, our life has only ever been this present moment. Ever present moment. And you are this eternal stillness, or this present moment that doesn't move. And within this ever-present moment, formations occur, which we call thoughts, feelings, sensations, perceptions. Just as in the stillness of the sky, movement happens and formations happen called clouds, birds, bees. But yet the sky is none of those things. Since life is only the present moment, right? Our mind, with all its commentary about the past, about the present, about the future, it perceives past actions or future actions and presents itself in this present moment. What do I mean by the present moment before we continue? You are the present moment. When you were at your graduation at 18, it was this present moment, just different formations. Everything is present. Everything you experience is present. But when we live in the story of the character, we take what we perceive as past actions and bring them into the present. Like, why did this man say this about me? All this commentary, this inner commentary comes. Why did this person rob me? Why did they cheat on me? It comes into the present moment. And this is what brings suffering. This story of a character that we are not, that we perceive ourselves to be, brings suffering with it, even when these sufferings are not happening. And so this story forms that there is someone who is suffering or resisting how life currently is. This story we have tied to events and tied them in a string called the me presents itself in the present moment when I could be at peace just resting in my room, present themselves in the mind as a story of a me who goes through all these things, in a me who doesn't want this current situation. And so what happens is we attach past stories to present sensations, which actually have nothing to do with one another. For instance, I can be feeling sadness right now because of a loved one who left me. And I attach these two happenings together and tie them in a string and make a story of them. That these are happenings to a me. But the present, if you have ever rested with the present sensation of sadness, what is it in its presence without the story attached to it? What is the raw sensation or feeling? Without the story attached. Is it suffering? Have you ever felt sadness just by itself without a story attached to it, every action, sensation, thought, perception is independent of each other. We bind these actions, thoughts, sensations, and appearances together with imagination and create a story out of them. And so when we say this person has angered me, we think the person has caused the anger. These are two independent happenings that we tie together with the story. So when you examine any sensation or feeling independent of the story, you will see that these things do not bring suffering. Only the story tied together brings suffering, and which in turn brings ignorance of truth. And then we go out and react according to this ignorance. And so when we see that what we believe we are, when we say we are this or that these are nothing but thoughts that are not always present with us, but I am present even when these thoughts aren't here. When this is seen, what begins to happen is the identifying of this character begins to fall away. Or, as it is said in some spiritual circles, the ego is seen through. Or in other religions, you begin to sacrifice yourself or to die daily to this character that you have believed you were this whole time. And so I often tell people that you are already that light. You are just veiled. And when I speak to a lot of people in religion, they have a hard time because they read their so-called spiritual text and it says, no, I will be given this. Well, let me give you an analogy of being trapped in a tunnel. And what's only blocking you from the entrance or the exit of the tunnel is a wall of rocks. So the tunnel, the light from the tunnel is always shining on the rocks, but you're on the opposite side in darkness. This is the realm of being in the story of the character. And so what must happen is that we must begin to remove these boulders and these rocks in order to see the light that's on the other side. The light has always been there. We have just been veiled from it by the boulders. So once the boulders are removed, the light shines forth. These boulders represent the character, this figment of imagination that we have took ourselves to be. And I understand right now I'm talking about subtle things that are hard to understand. But when you examine your own self diligently, it will be seen through, and you will remove these boulders that block the light of truth out of your sight. And so when these boulders are removed, the light shines through. It was always there. And so when we read spiritual texts that say, it will be given. Well, once the boulders are removed, the light was given. That doesn't mean it wasn't always there. So you have to read with understanding whatever spiritual text you read. And so when these boulders are removed, the character and the story begin to dissolve. And what's left is the ultimate truth, or that light that shines. The presence that you have always been, that was always there. And so when you understand that you're not a thought, because thoughts come and go, but you are ever present. When you understand that you are not a feeling, because feelings come and go, but you were there before they came and after they leave. When you realize you're not the body, because you were present before the body and you will be there after. The body is a constant movement, just as thoughts constantly move, feelings constantly move. The body is a constant action, a constant movement within your eternal stillness. You are the one that witnesses the changing, so you must in turn be the stillness or the unchanging. What will happen when you begin to pry yourself from the story of the character? And again, the story is fine when it is seen for what it is, a story that you are not. What will happen is when you begin to pry yourself from this story, the mind will rise again and say, no, I am this. Right? And it will fight you. And you will lose yourself in the story. But when you remember, come back and fall back into the witnessing of this story that is being created. And the more you do that, the more you will free yourself from the story that the mind has created. And this is called awakening. Awakening from the sleep of being this dream character to the realization that you are not the character. And you will begin to witness the story or the narrative of the character, the idea, the thoughts that you have believed yourself to be from outside of the narrative. You go from being solely in the story of the character to witnessing the story from the outside. You go from being the character, or you go from knowing I am the character to knowing I am the witness of the narrative or the character. And the character does not truly exist. What we call a character is a concept we have created around thoughts, ideas, and feelings and perceptions. Just as if you looked in the sky and saw the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper is a concept in the minds of men. There is no actual Big Dipper. But if you have looked at the Big Dipper every day for 30, 40 years, it will be hard to understand that this is a concept. So every time you look up, it's hard to not see the Big Dipper. This is the same as I'm telling you now, that it will be hard for you not to see that you are just an idea. You are just a concept, a collection of feelings, thoughts, sensations, and perceptions that you have created with your mind to say this is you. But again, when you begin to see through it, you no longer identify with the character. You identify with the witness of the narrative of the character. And when this happens, this is what is called awakening again. And this is only the beginning. Because after awakening, you will have to discover what this witness that I am is. And so, what begins to be seen when you start to pry yourself out of the story is that there's no individual agent inside the body, as we did the thought experiment with our thoughts, directing the thoughts. There's no individual agent directing the thoughts inside the body or the activities of that individual body. This was just a made-up character, a story, a non-existent me that has been created through ideas or thoughts. And what is seen is there's no personal responsibility for anything. And when you tell somebody this, oddly they think that this understanding makes one act irresponsibly. But it is actually the feeling and identifying as a personal character, as a figment of imagination, as an idea that I am a character in a story with a personal responsibility that produces irresponsible behavior. When we have the feeling of personal responsibility, that I am a character, I am a me in this story, and others have personal responsibility. I look at others like, look at how he robbed me, look at how he cheated me, how he defamed me, and I act according to these thoughts in ignorance, which lead to irresponsible behavior. But when the character is seen from the outside, when the character is, you're no longer embodied in the character, you have separated yourself or sanctified yourself from the character. And the character, you no longer identify with that character. One does not go about in those irresponsible ways, in those personal ways. Everything is impersonal. Everything is just appearances in what I am. They are all universal movements of a universal presence. And so you begin to not identify with the personal limited self, but you fall into the impersonal, infinite truth of who you are. And know that that is what created all of this, even the idea of who you used to believe you are. And then you will see that people do not truly exist as how I once perceived. Only the source or God or being is. Peace.
Trying to get peace on my mind and recover from the past deeds that I done did back then. Holocaust feeds, I reverse and revise that step by step. I'm taking hard try, mental gaze and